So to achieve a flawless frontal install, you'll be needing a Care Wax styling stick, which you can get from Sally's or your local beauty supply. And you'll need a makeup brush and two rubber gloves, a rat tail comb, LA Girl Pro Concealer. You can also get this from your local beauty supply. You'll need tweezers, an eyebrow razor, small scissors. I prefer using small scissors because it's better to cut the lace with smaller scissors. You'll need 91% or higher alcohol. You'll also need nude caps, ghost bond adhesive, a white hand towel or any light colored towel would work. You'll need paper towels and got to be freeze spray and got to be gel in the black tube. You'll also need a mixing bowl and a brush. You'll need 20 volume developer and BW2 bleaching powder. You'll also need a spray bottle of water, needle and thread, of course, and of course your styling tools like your hot comb and flat iron, curling one, whatever you want to use, and of course your frontal. Right now I'm using a regular Swiss lace frontal. You can also use a transparent or HD lace frontal. I suggest getting a frontal that already has a natural hairline shape. And I'm definitely going to be sending out a list of these things, including the pictures of them as well, so you guys can know exactly what you need. So before I do anything, I always like to start by bleaching the knots on the frontal. This is a very important step because it gives the frontal the scalp effect you're going for, so never skip this part. Go ahead and put your gloves on and use your spray bottle of water to wet the flyaway hairs or the baby hairs so that you can comb and push them out the way because you don't want these hairs to get bleached during the bleaching process. After you have moved the flyaway hairs out the way, go ahead and lay the frontal on your countertop or tabletop and pour 2 full scoops of the bleaching powder and about 4.5 caps of the 20 volume developer into your mixing bowl. You always want to be very careful with this step. This will make or break your frontal install. Always be sure that the consistency of the bleach mixture is sort of like a thick peanut butter consistency. You never want the mixture to be too watery so that it won't seep through the lace and bleach the hair. Now you can go ahead and start applying the bleach on the lace. When I'm applying bleach to the front of the frontal, I like to lift up the lace as I go, just so I won't get the bleach on the counter on accident. Because when that happens, 9 times out of 10, you have the bleach on the hair as well. So just be very gentle and careful with this step. So after you're done applying the bleach to your frontal, you want to let this sit on about 30 minutes. Usually if my client brings their frontal the time of their appointment, I will be letting this bleach as I'm braiding down. So by the time I'm done braiding my client down, my frontal will be done bleaching. So yeah, you can do that, or you can get them to bring it ahead of time, a couple days ahead, or yeah, whatever you want to do. You also want to go ahead and check the other side of the frontal to make sure that no bleach got on the hair. If it did somehow get on the hair, go ahead and wet your fingers and pinch the bleach out that may have got on the hair, and you'll be just fine. As long as the product is wet, it won't process, it won't bleach the hair. Now I'm going to take my Got to Be gel and my edge comb to push back her edges. We don't want this to get in the glue and you don't want your client to lose any edges. So go ahead and push her edges back. Also, when you're doing this step, you want to be sure to get the hair that's behind her ears as well, meaning that you want to gel the hairs behind her ears in an upward motion instead of gelling them back. This leaves part of her skin exposed so that when you glue her frontal down behind her ears, it will be applied on her skin instead of her hair. And if your client has on makeup or has oily skin, you can go ahead and clean around her forehead and behind her ears with a paper towel and your 91% or higher alcohol, because you want to make sure there is no oils left, because that will prevent the frontal from sticking. So right now I'm just showing you guys her breakdown. She just has regular cornrows to the back. They're just connected. I suggest when you do your client's breakdown that they are connected in the back. It makes your install a lot flatter. So after the Got to Be gel is completely dry, go ahead and put your cap all the way over her forehead and over her ears. Usually before I start spraying the Got to Be spray on, I cut small holes in the ear area so I could take her ears out. But this part I guess I forgot, but I'm definitely going to get to it later on, so just keep watching. Go ahead and get your Got to Be freeze spray and start spraying directly on her hairline. Try to avoid getting too much spray on the skin. You only want to cover up her hairline in that direction only. So now you can see I'm going in and cutting the holes to take her ears out. Then I'm going to go back in with the Got to Be freeze spray and spray behind her ears. So now you can go ahead and start blow drying her cap. It's important to hold down the sides and behind her ears as you blow dry so that it will actually stick to her skin. You can go ahead and start blow drying her cap. You want to make sure it's completely dry because when we start cutting, you don't want the cap to unravel. Now I'm going to start sewing her cap down. I like to start sewing directly behind her ear and work my way over to the other ear. I like to sew with one loop and pull. If you pay attention a little closely, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about with the loop and pull method. Just keep watching. Once you get behind the other ear, just go ahead and wrap it around 3 times and knot it, and you can go ahead and cut the thread out. So after you're done sewing your cap down, go ahead and get the LA Girl Pro Concealer that's closest to your client's skin tone and rub it in with that makeup brush and apply it exactly where your frontal going to be. So I'm not going to do the whole cap. I'm just going to go about 5 inches back and cover the front really good. And also, you don't need much concealer. You never want your cap or your frontal to be too caked up with makeup. So after you've applied your concealer, you can go ahead and start cutting your cap. I suggest cutting as close as possible to her hairline. If some freeze spray did happen to get on her skin, do not hesitate to pull some of the cap back a bit and cut it where it was excess cap left over. When you start to cut the back of the cap out, be sure to not cut too close to the threads because you don't want the cap to unravel. Always remember to lift up the cap behind the ear to expose some skin because remember we're gluing the frontal down behind her ear as well. So we never glue on the cap, we always glue on skin. So just be sure to cut that out too. So after you're done with that, it should be time to wash the frontal out. So yeah, I like to start out by rinsing all the bleach out first with just water and then go in with the shampoo and wash all the bleach out. You want to make sure it's washed thoroughly. You don't want any bleach or product left over because you don't want to damage your client's skin or anything like that. So the shampoo I'm using is Tresemme, but you can use the purple shampoo, the Shimmer Lights purple shampoo, or neutralizing shampoo. It's completely up to you, but this has been working for me. I just been using regular shampoo. It's been doing just fine. So after you've washed your frontal out, you want to take your white towel or your light color towel, and I like to lay it across my leg. This is an easier way for me to pluck. And you want to lay your frontal across and comb it out. Now you want to go in with your rat tail comb and part out the thin layer of hair that's in the front of your frontal. We want to move this out the way because we're going to pluck this last. Because it's already thin, you don't want to pluck it any much thinner. So yeah, go ahead and part that hair out. And once you're done parting all the thin hairs out the front, you want to go ahead and start the plucking process. Always make sure your frontal is wet while you're plucking, because if it's dry, you would end up plucking too much and your frontal will be too thin. I always like to pluck with the pointy end of my tweezers instead of holding them slanted. But yeah, that makes it easier for me to snatch the hair out. When you're plucking your frontal, you always want to be sure to pluck from the roots and backwards. You want to pluck in the same direction that the hair is going, and you want to only pluck about a half an inch or an inch back. As you're plucking, be sure not to pluck too much in the front, because you don't want the hair to keep gradually getting thinner and thinner and going back, because it's going to create a bald spot. So once you see the hair is getting thinner in the front, start plucking behind the hairline. You also want to pluck pretty fast, because if you pluck too slow, then you will accidentally create a bald spot. The plucking process should take about 30 minutes. Please take your time with this process, because this will make or break your install. So as you're plucking, picture a hairline that you're going for and try your best to achieve that look. Also, when I'm plucking, I always like my sides to be thinner than the middle. So always try to pluck your sides a bit thinner than the middle, because let's say if your client has a middle part, you don't want the middle part to be spaced out. You always want your middle part to be defined. And the plucking process is very repetitive. So just continue plucking the exact same way throughout the entire frontal. And also, when you're plucking, you want to make sure that the hairline appears to gradually get thicker instead of the front being thin and then jumps to a thick line of hair in the back. You want to make sure that it looks as natural and clean as possible. Now I'm done plucking this side, so I'm going to hold it up and show you guys how it should look. Try to pluck your frontal as similar to this look as you can, and continue this same process with the rest of your frontal. After you're done plucking both sides, you can go ahead and start plucking the middle. You can pluck the middle the same exact way that you pluck the sides, but you just don't want to make the middle too thin, as I said before. So after you're done plucking, this is how your frontal should turn out. It should look as natural as possible. If you feel like you want to go back in and pluck more, you can. Also, when you're done plucking, this is about how much hair you should have plucked out, about a handful. So now you want to go in with the same concealer that you used on your client's cap. Rub it in the makeup brush as good as you can, and go ahead and wipe that brush across your frontal on the back and also on the front. When you start to brush the concealer on the front of the frontal, be sure to brush sideways because you don't want to get too much makeup in the hair. So now it's time to sew down your frontal. You want to bring the frontal in the front around your client's head and position it in a way that her edges are fully covered. It really doesn't matter about the middle because even if the middle is too far down, you could always cut it and make it the type of hairline that you want it to be. Just always be sure to make sure that her side edges are covered with the frontal. Once you have positioned your client's frontal correctly, go ahead and get them to hold it or pull it down as flat as they can. You don't want the frontal to be loose because you don't want those wrinkles or the frontal to be lumped up when you glue it down. You want it to be a flat install. Now you can go ahead and start to sew your frontal down. Go ahead and start from one side behind the ear. I'm sewing this the exact same way that I sewed the nude cap down. So yes, one loop and pull all the way over to the other side. Once you've sewed your frontal all the way down to the other ear, go ahead and wrap the thread around a needle about 3 times to knot it, and you can go ahead and cut the thread out. Now I'm going to go ahead and start sewing her bundles in. You can do this part after you glue the frontal down or before, it doesn't matter. I like to double the first 2 bundles and single the last bundle. Go ahead and put your needle through the 2 wefts to connect them. So you want to start sewing your bundle in directly behind the frontal. You don't want to sew it actually on the frontal, because if you do it that way, you'll keep pulling your frontal back, and you want it to be in the same position that you position it to be in the beginning. And remember, you're sewing in a smiley face direction to each side. I'm continuing sewing in the same method as I've been sewing, with the one loop and pull. When I sew in my bundles, I like to do the flip over method. I do not cut the wefts unless I absolutely have to, but I'm showing you guys how to do the flip over method right now. So you want to go ahead and fold over the weft, but position it with your fingers so that the weft is securely in place, and you want to keep sewing over and over that same corner until it's flat as you want it to be. So continue with this method until you've reached about the top middle of your client's head, and then I will be back to show you guys how to close it in. So now after you've sewed in your first two bundles, you want to go ahead and sew in your last bundle. I always single this bundle because I always want to make sure that the top is flat. So you want to continue sewing this bundle the exact same way that you sewed the first two bundles in. You want to make sure you're still sewing in the smiley face direction until you get closer to closing in the tracks. Once you get to about this part of your client's head, you want to start sewing side by side. So you're going to stop sewing in the smiley face direction. You want to sew straight across and keep flipping it. Now you see I'm just sewing halfway around, not all the way. I'm going to stop about midway and I'm going to keep flipping over and over until I've completely filled in the rest of her head. Remember to keep sewing those corners down that you flipped over. We want this install to be as flat as possible. If your client has any hair left over, go ahead and cut that out. And lastly, go ahead and knot the thread and you can cut it. Now it's time to start the process of gluing your client's frontal down. So first you want to go ahead and pull her frontal all the way back. When you're applying the frontal adhesive, you want to make sure you're not applying straight across her forehead. You want to be sure to apply in a hairline direction. And please be sure to put glue behind her ears as well because we're going to be gluing the frontal down behind her ears. When you do start to apply the frontal adhesive, you don't want to use too much. We are going to do 3 layers, but you want to do 3 thin layers of the glue. Next, you want to take the end of your rat tail comb and smooth each layer out. As you're smoothing, be sure to do it a bit quickly because you don't want one side to dry faster than the other side. This is also a very important step because if you do not smooth out your adhesive, it will not dry clear. Go ahead and apply the last 2 layers in the same shape that you did with the first layer. Once you have applied all three layers of the adhesive, go ahead and pull your client's frontal down in the middle. Push it, put a little bit of pressure down in the middle, and then focus on the sides. So you want to comb through on the sides, but push in the glue at the same time. Make sure the lace and the glue is very secured together. Always remember to put pressure on the lace behind her ears as well, because we also have glue behind her ears. So never forget this step. Be sure to part the hair out around her ears as well, because we're going to cut this excess lace off. You always want to make sure that you're parting out the excess lace in the hair, because if you don't part it out and you just cut straight across, you will be cutting hair and it'll be small beards of hair left over. Now I'm just parting out the excess hair and cutting out the extra lace that we won't be needing. When you're cutting the extra lace off, cut as close as possible to where you applied the glue, but be sure to cut the lace over the glue, because you never want to have glue left on your client's skin outside of the lace. So yeah, pay very close attention to where the glue stops at before you go in and cut it. And as I'm cutting, I'm not cutting in a straight line. I'm cutting in more of a zigzag motion. So basically all I'm doing is cutting in the same direction of the hairline we created with the glue. And as you're cutting the lace, be sure to push the lace down into the glue with the end of your rat tail comb. Also, after you're done cutting the lace, feel free to go back in with the makeup brush if needed. So all I did was part her hair straight down the middle. Now I'm taking my hot and gold hot comb that I purchased from Target.com and using that to flatten the top of her hair. Also, I went in with the Care wax stick before I started hot combing. And you don't need to apply much of the Care wax stick because you don't want the hair to be weighed down with product. And be sure to hot comb some of the hair over the tracks in the back so that the track will be completely covered. So now you can go ahead and start combing a few hairs out for her baby hairs. You don't need much hair out for this because you don't want the baby hairs to be too thick. You want them to look as natural as you can. I personally like to comb the edges out. I really don't like to part them out because the combing effect gives the baby hairs a more natural look. After you have combed a few hairs out for her baby hairs, go ahead and take the eyebrow razor and start cutting in a slanted direction. You want to be sure to cut in a slanted direction downward. You never want to cut your baby hairs too blunt because they won't look natural once you lay them. Also, you never want to cut the baby hairs too long because you want them to look natural. I suggest cutting them a bit short, but not way too short that they won't lay down. After you're done cutting your baby hairs, go ahead and take the small comb that came with your scissors, or you can take an edge brush and smooth the edges in. You want to use one hand with the edge brush and use the other hand with a finger to smooth them in. You want to kind of finger wave them in. I'm using the Got To Be gel in a black tube. This is the same gel that we use for her natural edges to slick them back in the beginning of the video. You want to use this for her frontal baby hairs as well. I just put a little bit on the back of my hand and use it that way. I also like to apply some of the Got To Be gel on her hairline as well. I use this so that the hairline on her frontal can be more defined. So yeah, all I do is apply a small amount on the comb and kind of comb the gel through her hairline. So keep basically playing with the baby hairs until you are satisfied with them or until they are to your liking. So keep doing these exact same steps for the rest of the baby hairs and as well as for the other side of her head. Right here, you can see that I'm just hot combing the front of her frontal so it can be flatter. You want to be very careful with this step. You never want to burn your client's skin. So now that you've completed the baby hairs, go ahead and start plucking the part. I do not use tweezers when I pluck the part. I just simply part out a thin layer of hair and I pluck it out with my hands. Plucking the part this way makes it easier to achieve a more defined and straight part. Other than using the tweezers, you may pluck too much. Now that you're done with your frontal sew-in, go ahead and style your client's hair. I suggest when watching this video that you are practicing on someone so you can have the hands-on effect. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at cashmerehairco@gmail.com.